He has got to be a player they can rely on in big situations.
And Gerhard Mathangani
has the trust of his team. Sounds like the makeup of his team is in a really good space, and I believe that's because of the culture he's curated down there.
For WKXX Live, these guys have you covered from preps to pros and everything in between. Now, let's go inside the Fox Sports 102.9 studio with Chase and Gerhard for WKXX Live.
Welcome in, WKXX Live, Thursday afternoon, game day for college football. Man, we're here. We have 5 straight days of college football on your television, and it starts today.
Yeah, one of the things that I've run into a couple of times today, you know how when you start the new year for the first maybe 2 or 3 weeks, when you're writing things down, you just subconsciously, you just write down the year before. Sometimes it happens month to month to me as well, but for some reason it never happens in September. As soon as the calendar turns to September, I know exactly we're in football season, and that happened to me today. And so it's one of those things where it's game day. We're here. I know college football had like a week 0 last week, but ostensibly everything's here this week, starting today and continuing on into Saturday.
And there was even a little chill in the air this morning. As I went outside this morning, I could feel it. Probably not right now. I haven't been out this afternoon.
Right.
But this morning, a fall feel in the air. You could just tell. Like it's here.
Yeah, it is here. And I think it's one of the things where football in and of itself, unlike any other sport, maybe baseball a little bit when you get into spring training and then into the summer, but football comes with its own feel, its own vibe altogether. And at each level of football, the vibe feels different, but the vibe around the game feels the same. On the high school level, you get back into, everybody's back into school. You have the hype of going back to school and at the same time starting your football season. In college, it's, as you mentioned, the weather cooling down, the tailgating and all of that. And in the NFL, want to trim down to your 53-man roster right after Labor Day is when you start getting cranked up for the football season in the NFL. So football has its own little niche of excitement, and we're seeing it on all 3 levels.
Yeah, a week from tonight, NFL will kick off their 2022 season. College football, of course, getting going. High school football going on as well. We've got a lot to get to today. We got a couple of great guests. Looking forward to talking with Mike Paris, voice of the Jacksonville State Gamecocks. We'll preview the JSU Davidson game coming up at 2:30. And at 3 o'clock, Lynn Scarborough with Lindy's Sports magazines, and as well as the Lindy's College Football Report that you'll hear tomorrow right here on Fox Sports 102.9. Lynn Scarborough will join us, talk some SEC football. And so looking forward to both of those guys joining us. We've got a lot of football to talk about. We'll get into some Braves baseball as well, but we got to start with the college football that is coming today. And if you want to chime in on the conversation as we talk college football, 256-413-1029 is the phone number. That is 256-413-1029. I want to start with the in-state game, though. You got Alabama A&M, you got UAB. And I think a lot of people are going to be watching this game because this is the first time in a while that we've not seen Bill Clark on the sideline for UAB. It's the game 1 for Bryant Vincent, who is kind of taking an interim role there at UAB. And I think a lot of people are going to be excited to be at Protective Stadium and watch the Blazers tonight.
And I'll be right there with the excitement because you have, as you mentioned, Coach Vincent taking on his, initial role as the head coach of the UAB Blazers. They wanted continuity within the team, and I think they got it with Brian Vincent. And we talked to Steve Irvine not too long ago, and he seconded that. He talked about how that this program will look a lot similar to what it did under Bill Clark. Of course, Brian has his own ways of doing things and some of the things that he'll implement with his football team. But I think to have this game on a Thursday, it's basically the standalone game in the state. 2 teams in the state. I think there'll be a great crowd over at Progressive Stadium today over in Birmingham. The Alabama A&M crowd. They're obviously really excited about football. The UAB crowd is excited about football as well. I know UAB is a big favorite. I think according to Vegas, they're like 40.5-point favorite in tonight's matchup. And I do expect UAB to go out there and take care of business and win the football game. But the atmosphere around it, I think, is really special for UAB. As well as for Alabama A&M, and then for people in and around the state of Alabama. JSU kind of got the lone stage last Saturday. Alabama State got the lone stage last Saturday as well. Today, Alabama A&M and UAB will, and then everybody gets started up on Saturday.
Yeah, you can watch UAB, Alabama A&M tonight on CBS Sports Network. At 7 p.m. they'll have that game. So, again, good that CBS Sports Network is carrying that game, so the folks here in Alabama will be able to watch the UAB Blazers tonight. An SEC team in action. We got Ball State at Tennessee. This is kind of a game. Yeah, it's Ball State, but Tennessee needs to set the tone for their season.
Yeah, they do. And if you look at some of the rankings, I think it was CBSSports.com did a cool power rankings, and they power ranked all the quarterbacks, specifically the quarterback, not necessarily their NFL draft preview, but just the way they stand in college. Obviously, the top two were not there was no debate about it. Number one was Bryce Young. Number two was C.J. Stroud. And a lot of people think that those are the front runners for the Heisman Trophy. At number 5, though, was the guy that you're really high on, Hendon Hooker of Tennessee. And so this is his coming out party. Can he get to a point where Tennessee and Tennessee fans, and he puts the country on alert that, he's one of the prime guys that can lead his team to a big run. I really like Tennessee's setup right now going into the season with Coach Josh Heupel in another year, a seasoned veteran quarterback, a mature guy, and he'll have the chance against Ball State. Once again, just like with the UAB, it's a game that they should win. I expect them to win. They're a big favorite in the matchup, but a chance for Hendon Hooker, I think, to really show the leaps he's taken from last year.
Yeah, and I think he will. Big time tonight. Again, Ball State at Tennessee. That is the only SEC team playing tonight, and we'll see how the Tennessee Vols start off. I do want to mention coming up later in the show, we're going to give our SEC record predictions of where we think each team will finish. So I'm excited about that coming up a little bit later on. Another game here I thought was interesting, Central Michigan at Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State's one of those teams. We've seen them kind of on the verge of being one of those top-tier teams the last few years. I don't know if we'll see it this year, but should be an interesting game for them to start things off tonight.
Yeah, the Chippewas are usually pretty sneaky. They're a sneaky ball team, and I do expect Oklahoma State to win the game. They come in number 12 in the country. I don't know if they'll hold on to a top 15 ranking. I won't be a bit surprised if they do. Mike Gundy's a really good coach, and they return a lot of players, especially on the outside, that I expect to have a really big season for them. But Central Michigan, they will not come in scared at all in this football game. Also, a kind of a milestone game, possibly, for Coach Mike Gundy. He's sitting on 149 wins, so he could be in that 150 club if they can get a win in Stillwater coming up a little bit later on tonight. So it's a really, I think, intriguing game for the game outside of the SEC and outside of the state of Alabama as the first two that we talked about. A game to keep your eye on. Oklahoma State's a big favorite in the matchup, but I think that it'll be a more interesting game than I think that, it won't be the same kind of blowout that in my opinion, that the first two games probably will.
Derek Mason, his first game as defensive coordinator for Oklahoma State.
That's right.
Former Vandy coach, former Auburn defensive coordinator last year. So we'll get to see him in the Oklahoma State Cowboys defensive room there. The Backyard Brawl tonight used to be a game we saw at the end of the season. It is tonight, though, to start the season. West Virginia at Pittsburgh. It's one of those games that always seems to be pretty fun.
Yeah, it does. And, you got I think when you think about this game, you have a lot of history within this game. There's some memorable games in this matchup. I really like the fact that they were playing at the beginning of the year. As you mentioned, this is usually a game that is segmented for the end of the season. And I think it's two really, really strong programs going into the year. Pittsburgh ranked 17th. I think a lot of that's based on what they did last year. No Kenny Pickett. So can they, find a new quarterback? Can West Virginia go on and with a new quarterback with JT Daniels, as you mentioned yesterday, the Georgia transfer, with an offense that I think is going to be really fun. Pat Narduzzi's a really good coach that I think a lot of people are really high on going into the season. Of all the games that we highlighted, I think this will be the closest game. And obviously, according to Vegas, they think it's going to be within a touchdown or so into the matchup as they go to Pitt. So, yeah, this is a really fun rivalry, and I'm excited about this one as well.
You mentioned those memorable moments. I've been seeing a lot of one particular one back in 2007. Our buddy Rich Rodriguez, the head coach at West Virginia, number 2 in the country was West Virginia at this time. They were playing really for a trip to the national championship. If they would have beaten Pitt, there's a good chance they would have been in the national championship. Pitt beat them there, and Pat McAfee, who has made his a major presence in sports media, was the kicker for West Virginia at that time, and so a lot of crazy games have happened in this rivalry.
Yeah, there certainly has been a lot of just really, I think, really fun, really interesting games. A lot of pros. You mentioned Pat McAfee has played in this game. You think of guys like Tavon Austin and others that have played a really huge role in this game as they move forward. Pat White's another big guy from the state of Alabama, actually, who was a quarterback for West Virginia, played in this game as well. And so, yeah, I mean, I expect there to be some fireworks going into this one, and once again another great game. But I don't think it'll. I'm not sure if it will hold the exact same merit as the game back in 2007 did when Pitt won that one. I think it was at 13-9. Was the final score in that one. And so, that was actually the hundreds matchup of these two teams. So it goes back a really, really long ways, and I'm glad they kept the rivalry going.
Yeah, for sure. And so lots of great college football coming up tonight, and then we've got just a weekend full of college football all day Saturday. Of course, we'll see Auburn, we'll see Alabama on Saturday, Jacksonville State as well. Got games Sunday night, got games Monday. Should be a fantastic weekend. And start your day off Saturday morning. We'll have the college kickoff show at 9 o'clock Saturday morning. Gerhard and I will be back with you for that, as we'll be previewing the day of college football. We'll kind of put a bow on the Thursday night games, the games that are happening tonight. We'll break those down and then get you ready for a day full of college football. So be listening Saturday morning at 9 o'clock from 9 to 10 on the college kickoff show. We've got a lot more college football talk to get to today. Again, we'll give you our SEC record predictions. We'll kind of go around the SEC, check in on the Florida Gators, on the Arkansas Razorbacks. We'll talk JSU Davidson. Mike Parrish will join us at 2:30. Lynn Scarborough will talk SEC football with us there from Lindy Sports. We want to dive into some Braves baseball coming up next. The Braves got a good win last night. We'll talk about it on the other side. Stick around. It is WKXX Live here on this Thursday.
Being an Army Ranger
Welcome back in. WKXX Live, Thursday afternoon. Chase Robinson, Gerhard, Mathangani here with you. 256-413-1029 is our phone number. That is 256-413-1029. College football game day, but hey, Braves baseball still rolling here, and the Braves got a good win last night. After dropping 3 straight, the Braves able to get a win in Game 2 over the Rockies, 3-2. They lost 3-2 night before last, and was able to get the win 3-2 last night, and was behind some very good pitching by Kyle Wright.
Yeah, you mentioned yesterday the pitching out of the bullpen was sensational. Yesterday they got great starting pitching. It's exactly what they needed. Kyle Wright now leads all the major leagues, not just the National League, but leads all the major leagues in wins now, passing Justin Verlander and Tony Gonsolin with 17 wins now. He was sensational, 7 scoreless in his time there on the hill. And then Kenley Jansen came in towards the end, and he allowed 2 runs, which, I'm sure made people a little nervous, but they stuck with him. He was able to get the outs, and they ended up winning the game 3-2. I think this is the kind of win for the Braves that you're almost you're glad to have, because the Braves played ugly. They didn't play very well. They came out and got to a great start. Austin Riley's 2-run homer, and then they added another home run with Acuna Jr. a little bit later on in the game. They were able to touch up the starting pitching, Ryan Feltner, early, which is what we talked about yesterday. They needed to be able to get off to a nice start against a guy who's been struggling. They did so early on. The bats got kind of cool, though, in the middle of the game outside of Acuna's home run. They were actually out-hit in this game. The Rockies had 6 hits. The Braves only had 5, but the Braves were able to turn that into 3 RBI thanks to the home runs. And so to play this poorly, 5 of 27, and still get the win, I think it's really good. And obviously the young pitcher, Kyle Wright, once again, just making a name for himself. What a year. What a turnaround it's been since last year. And he's been sensational.
Yeah, really great, and made for a great night last night. You mentioned Austin Riley with the home run, Acuna with the home run. Acuna was 1 for 4 on the night. Riley 1 for 4. William Contreras 2 for 3. Michael Harris 1 for 2. That made up the 5 hits there for the Braves, and just a great win. They really needed it, and hopefully they can come back out with Spencer Strider on the mound and get it done again tonight. But I've been seeing today about Ronald Acuna, kind of staying on him. Mm-hmm. He was asked by the Atlanta Journal-Constitution yesterday how his knee was feeling following the game last night. And he said terrible, but we're going to play through it till the season is over.
Right.
Is that a concern, you think? I mean, right now, if he is really not 100%, and terrible is a strong word to describe your injury.
Yeah, I think that, not saying that he's over-exaggerating, because I'm obviously not in his body, so I don't feel the pain, but I think that he plays the game of baseball with such a high enthusiasm that you can almost mentally numb it out when he's playing the game. That's the reason for it not to be a concern. I think where it starts to be a concern is defensively. It's the reason why I think it was a great move to move him to DH. That way you still get his bat, but you don't have to risk him, sacrificing his body and injuring that knee even more out in the field. And so it's concerning a little bit, but I think if he continues to stay honest with the training staff. I know he missed last year, and one of the things about last year when they were making that run, and he wanted to be a part of that. And so the biggest thing now is don't sacrifice your knee now for wanting to be a part of the fun that you missed out on last year. And so it's a tad concerning, but as long as he stays open and honest, not only with himself, but with the training staff, and the training staff stays smart with him and do what they did yesterday, move him to DH whenever he's available, whenever he can, and then play him out on defensively whenever his knee feels good, then they can ride it out to the end of the season, and then he'll get a full off season of recovery. But I think as of right now, they're taking the I guess the more conservative approach, and I agree with that.
Yeah, for sure. And so Braves will go at it again with the Rockies tonight, and hopefully we'll walk away with a win in Game 3 of the series, and get the month of September started off on a good note, because then you got the Marlins coming to town for 3 games before having Monday off, and then hosting a couple of games with the Athletics. We're in September. We're virtually in the final full month of baseball in the regular season. We've mentioned it several times. It's a very important time for baseball. The Braves, if they want to make a postseason run, I mean, you're still 3 games behind the Mets.
Right.
You could get the wild card, but you want to get that division crown. There's a lot of baseball to be left to play in the next 30 days.
Right, and the schedule really breaks well for the Braves. You mentioned their West Coast road trip. They'll go to Oakland. They'll go to Seattle. Seattle's obviously a team that's vying for a playoff spot and looking to end the long drought that they have. And then and Oakland is a series that they should win. Miami's a series that they should win. And then a lot of games against Philadelphia, Washington, and Philadelphia and Washington again. Series at home stretch, and then on the road at both of those places in Philadelphia and the nation's capital. They really need to have a strong month of September. It doesn't have to be what they did in June, where they just went crazy, but a really strong month here, I think will go a long way. And then they'll get their chance there at the Mets later on in the season. And how great would it be in that little 3-game series against the Mets at the end of this month, September 30th, October 1st, and October 2nd, if that series can be for the division crown, because I think that will add to so much drama, and I'm kind of rooting for that. If the Braves just can't go out and just completely run past the Mets, if it is tight towards the end, I would like that. But we're getting to September baseball. I keep looking at if the season ended today, what if the playoff brackets right now would be in the American League? Your byes, Astros and Yankees. Your wild card games, Blue Jays at the Guardians, Mariners at the Rays. In the National League, your byes would be Dodgers and Mets. Your wild card games would be the Padres at the Cardinals and the Phillies and the Braves. And so if it ended today, we'll have another in-division matchup between the Phillies and Braves. So a lot of baseball has to be played. There's a good chance to get that bye and catch the Mets. There should be a lot of drama this month.
Yeah, there really should be. And that's what's fun about baseball. It's a long season, a lot of games, a lot of pitches thrown. But when you get to this time of the year, late September, October, and it's drama filled.
Yeah, and there's so many good teams right now, and they all seem to be playing their best baseball at different points of the season. Atlanta played really good baseball early on, kind of struggled right before the All-Star, or a little bit after the All-Star break, got their footing again. The Yankees, they had their struggles. They seem to be kind of going back on the uptick. The Dodgers have been really consistent all year long. They just had to battle some injuries to a lot of their players, but they were just so loaded. But yeah, watching the storylines over the next, I think, 6 weeks will be really entertaining, and especially for the Braves, who are right in the middle of the hunt.
Yeah. So Braves, Rockies coming up a little bit later on tonight. 5:05 airtime, 6:20 first pitch. Braves, Rockies, game 3, final game of the 3-game series with Colorado. We'll see if Spencer Strider can get things done on the mound tonight for the Braves. He's another up-and-coming pitcher that has done really good, has had some struggles, but overall has been pretty impressive.
Yeah, they leaned on the young arm yesterday of Kyle Wright, and I know Wright's a little bit older, it's just because he played in college. He went the distance in college, and so Spencer Strider, a really true young guy. We've seen him struggle right after the All-Star break. It feels like he's found his stride, no pun intended, as he's gotten a little bit more comfortable deeper in the season. That's the one thing we've talked about this for weeks now. It's the one thing that you always have pause with young pitchers is as the season gets tighter, you're going longer than you're used to going as far as your arm usage. But he's shown he could play really solid baseball here lately, and I expect him to have another great outing today. He understands how important this game is. They avoided their first 4-game losing streak since September of last year with the win yesterday, and I know he wants to keep that momentum going.
Sure does. And again, you'll hear Braves, Rockies tonight here on WKXX. You'll hear Jacksonville State football coming up on Saturday, and 1 o'clock kickoff, 12 noon pregame show, and the voice that you will hear on that game, Mike Paris, will join us on the other side of this break. Stick around as we'll talk some Jacksonville State football next here on WKXX Live.
Gregerson Cash
Hey, guys, I appreciate it. Thank you.
I know you saw a good win for the Gamecocks last week. I know it's much different than what you've been calling Jacksonville State football now. What, 40 years, and it's a much different pace of game, I believe, than what you're used to seeing. Talk about that, kind of calling this this Jacksonville State team the up tempo offense that Rich Rod has brought in.
Well, at times last Saturday it was pretty quick, and he says that he thinks we can go quicker. So that'll be interesting to see. He didn't think at times we were quick enough. When he wanted to go fast, we weren't fast enough. So, we've gone no huddle for the last several years, and at times had gone tempo, but I don't think what we've done in the past is what he would like to do now. So it'll be interesting to see how, if they get a handle on it and whatnot. I thought after the first quarter, the second, third quarters we played extremely well. I didn't get to play the last, I started to say 15 minutes, last 13 minutes of the game anyway. But with so many new faces, a lot of changes, I really didn't know what to expect going in. And the second quarter, third quarter, offensively, we scored 4 straight times we had the football, and I thought from beginning to end, our defense played outstanding last week.
100%. Mike, you've seen a lot of Zion Webb playing football over the course of the last few years. What did you make of his performance, and is it a kind of a precursor of what JSU fans can expect as they move forward?
If he can stay healthy, I think what we saw Saturday is what he could be, quite honestly. And I felt that since he came in here right out of high school. He's had 2 major surgeries since he's been here. We saw some of this, I think, in the spring of 21. During COVID of 20, we played the 4 games in the fall. And if you go back to the fall of 20, that last game we played in October of 20 against FIU, and we beat them down there. He actually came. Zion Webb got hurt. He came off the bench then, and he actually went and didn't throw a pass because he couldn't, because he'd undergone shoulder surgery, and he was just out there basically handing off. But then we get to the spring part of the schedule in 21, led us to an OVC championship, and got to the second round of the FCS playoffs, and he played very good in the spring, and he gets hurt in the playoff game against Delaware. And I still think if he doesn't get hurt in that game that we find a way to win that one with Delaware. But he missed all of last fall, so it's been a roller coaster ride for Zion, but he's talented. He can run. He can throw. He may not be as swift or as fleet of foot as some people, but he is a dual threat guy. And I think what we saw second quarter and third quarter Saturday, he could do that consistently.
We're talking with Mike Paris, voice of the Jacksonville State Gamecocks on the Gamecock Sports Network. As far as running backs for Jacksonville State, several guys touching the ball, a lot of big runs for Jacksonville State. They were able to get it done in the air as well. But what did you make of the backs that we saw last Saturday?
Well, I can tell you this. We got about 6 of them, and they all look the same. They're all about 5'8", 5'9". I think Ron Wiggins from Jacksonville High School may be the biggest of all of them. So we got to stay on our toes to make sure that we got the right folks in the game, talking about the right people. And got a couple of number changes in there from last year that adds to all this as well. So, but Anwar Lewis obviously was pretty good, 100 yards rushing last week. Mark LaRoche had a nice long run and ended up with, I think, 90 yards rushing. We knew he was quick and speedy, but, he did some damage between the tackles in that game on Saturday. So both those guys were outstanding. I think Wiggins got 1 carry in the game before it was halted. And, I keep thinking that at some point in time he's going to bust out and really develop into a guy who will be, can take it to the house every time he touches the football. But we've got a lot of depth there, and that's something we haven't had the last several years. And I'll look for us to continue. I think they played, 4 or 5 guys the other day, and I'll look for that to continue this week and in the weeks to come of the season.
For sure. Mike, defensively, this team gave up some points early on, but it really seemed to settle in as the offense was settling in as well. What do you make of this defense? I know it's going to be a little bit of a different defense just in general, having to play against the offense every day in practice. But what do you make of that unit and some of the things that they can do this season?
What experience and returnees we've got back, the majority of them are on defense, and I think that's we saw some of that in evidence on a Saturday with the experience of those guys, with Markel Benton and Stephante Tullis at linebacker, Jackson Luttrell up front there with J. Rock Swain, and then Jeremiah Harris in the secondary, and Yul Gowdy back there too at a corner. So, some experience with those guys. I thought they played very well. We had the 2 turnovers in the first quarter. We had a fumble, held them, and they missed a field goal, and then the second turnover was an interception that was returned in the vicinity of the 20-yard line, tackle on a penalty, and they had it first and goal at the 4-yard line. So, and it took them 4 downs to get in the end zone then on the 4th down touchdown pass. And, so they really, I think it was just a tad over 200 yards they'd allowed for the 3 quarters of the game that we played, and 2 minutes into the fourth quarter. I thought they were pretty good against the run, good against the pass, had 3 sacks during that time, and I think 6 tackles for losses. So obviously they were getting into the backfield and making some plays that way. And I think, we got to play some young guys. I think we'll see more of that as well and develop some depth. And I think that's going to be the big thing is developing some depth, and especially at linebacker behind Benton and Tullis. Need some guys there that don't have any experience, got to play them, and hopefully they can grow in a hurry at those spots.
Got Davidson coming up on Saturday. As you've been prepping for the game, what have you learned about Davidson? I know we haven't had a chance to see them play yet this season. It'll be their first game, but what can you tell us about the Davidson Wildcats?
Well, yeah, we played them in the opening round of the playoffs in that spring season in 21. Beat them 49-14 here. Had a big second quarter there that broke it open. They'll go, I guess you'd say, 4 wide, and they'll call them slot backs. They'll line them up in the slot or sometimes as wing backs, but they run triple option out of a shotgun offense is basically what they do. So they led the nation in rushing in FCS football last year, and I think they've led the nation 3 of the last 4 years. I was just looking at last year, 53% conversion rate on 3rd down, 4th down was even better than that. And, they average 3 yards a play a lot of times. Once they get to the 50, I think they'll probably go for it most of the time on 4th down, just across midfield like that. They won't be as big and probably won't have the speed as most folks will play this season, but with their offense, they try to keep it away, play ball control. So when you've got the ball, you got to take advantage of their opportunities. And from a defensive standpoint, guys are going to have to play very disciplined, play their position, so to speak, and their assignments on defense, and not get caught up and trying to make a big play or something like that. So it's we'll see them with a triple option, and we'll see Kennesaw later in the year. We played Kennesaw the last couple of years, so our guys have seen it. There are a lot of similarities, but yet some difference from them and what Kennesaw does as well. So just need to control the line of scrimmage and do like we did last week in the second, third quarters offensively, and do some damage there and take advantage of those opportunities when we get them.
We're talking with Mike Parrish of the Jacksonville State Gamecocks.
Didn't know on our time, but I had another quick one for you about the home game atmosphere coming up this week. Obviously, Burgess Snowfield going through a bit of a transition. You've caught a lot of games out that way. How different will this one look for the home fans? And do you expect to see possibly almost a better atmosphere with all the fans basically on one side of the field?
Well, everybody's going to be on that one side of the field, and the Southerners will be in the end zone. I think there is one section on what we would term the visitor side, which is the north side of the stadium. I think they're leaving that far section toward the end zone. I think they're going to leave it open. Band Day is one of the things going on Saturday, and they've had to cut it back because of the limited seating capacity with the construction that's just going to be taking place. So I think it's going to be great. Again, you're right on top of the field at our place anyway, and when you got everybody on that one side and right behind the bench and everything, and then those folks in the end zone, I think it will be a great environment. We're playing at 1 o'clock because we didn't think the lights were going to be up on the north side. As it turns out, they are still up, but some things have already begun construction-wise. But all 4 of our home dates that we have will be at 1 o'clock, and I know people don't. 1 o'clock in September is a little hot in Alabama. We'll try to survive there, but hopefully, I think the students will be there. And I think the way that we jumped out and played last week it's created additional excitement as well. So I think we'll pack it out, I think, for what we can get in there come Saturday.
Mike, I got one more question for you. As I was talking with Coach Rich Rodriguez prior to the season, talking with you and some other Jacksonville State folks, it was kind of knowing that you wouldn't be able to make the playoffs. You still, could win the ASUN, and that was going to be the goal this season. The ASUN released a statement yesterday afternoon saying Jacksonville State would be counted in the standings, but would not be eligible to win the ASUN football championship. What do you think that does to the season? I mean, the guys now aren't going to be able to make the playoffs and aren't going to be able to win the conference.
That takes that carrot away that you had. I'll put it that way. I would just sitting here thinking about it. Probably the coaches are going to use that to their advantage somehow, some way, as a motivational thing that they didn't want you to be able to win the championship, that sort of thing. You know how coaches can turn things and twist them and whatnot. So I think that'll probably somehow, some way be turned around into a motivational point. Then is what it will be once we get to conference play in a few weeks.
Mike Paris, voice of the Jacksonville State Gamecocks. You will hear him on Saturday right here on Fox Sports 102.9, your home for Jacksonville State football. Mike, as always, appreciate you hopping on with us, and we'll do it again real soon.
All right, guys. Thanks. Look forward to it. See you.
Thank you. Mike Paris, voice of the Jacksonville State Gamecocks. Thought that was I'll be nice, weak move by the ASUN for putting that out yesterday after leading Jacksonville State on as you're going to be able to win the conference championship. Ted Gumbart, the commissioner of the ASUN, released a statement yesterday saying they would be in the standings, but not eligible to win the ASUN championship.
It's really unfortunate because you do take, and Mike put it kindly, where you take that carrot away. In a lot of ways, take the motivation away from some of these guys, and obviously you don't. In a perfect world, you're not playing the sport in order to win. Or in order to, just win accolades and titles. They are, kind of the whole motto is like, you want to, grow as a team and do all that. I mean, these things are fine to talk about in theory, but in my opinion, what it does for this team, I think it can help galvanize them. I think it can help to a point where, hey, they don't want you to win. And obviously we had a weird situation last year. But you think about it last year in basketball, where Jacksonville State ended up making the NCAA basketball tournament because of the transition year with Bellarmine and all that. That was an NCAA rule. And that was once you can't get in because you're in that transition period. And so Bellarmine ended up winning it on the court. But Jacksonville State, who beat Bellarmine early on, they got a chance to go to the big dance. And so I think it is unfortunate for this team, but it can be galvanizing for this team as well as, hey, let's go out there and leave no doubt who the best team in this conference is. And if they can, stick a touchdown or two on, I'm not saying disrespect your opponent, but if they can stick a touchdown or two on to really drive it in that they're the best team, I think that they'll take advantage of those opportunities.
Yeah, I think so too. I agree with you there, but it's still unfortunate news there that they won't be able to win the conference. But I mean, look, if Jacksonville State plays the way they did Saturday, I'd see them putting up a lot of points on a lot of different teams.
Yep, same here, and especially if teams make mistakes the way that the way that Sam Houston or Stephen F. Austin did Saturday, I think that their teams will be in a load of trouble against the Gamecocks, and we've already seen some teams are already getting out and talking about this season in the ASUN, and they're expecting ASUN football to be one of the more respected conferences. The Gamecocks don't have many ties to the ASUN, and this might. I don't want to go, conspiracy theory. The fact that they're leaving the ASUN probably didn't hurt them at all to make that decision. The fact that they're going to Conference USA is probably tied into it. So it's all speculation. I don't know that for sure. But yeah, it is unfortunate for this one season before they transition to FBS.
Yes. Jacksonville State Davidson, we're going to preview that game coming up. And we may or may not give you a chance to win some Buffalo Wild Wings coming up as well. So you're going to want to stick around as we continue here on WKXX Live. We'll be back in a moment.
Hello, friends. This is Ryan Morris, pastor of First Baptist Church of Hoax Bluff. I love the football season.
We are back here on WKXX Live, Fox Sports 102.9. Jason Gerhard here with you on this Thursday. College football opening day for a lot of teams across the country, and we'll get it going full day, full weekend, really, of college football this weekend. Jacksonville State, we were just talking with Mike Paris of the Gamecock Sports Network. Jack State Davidson meet for the second time ever coming up this Saturday. Mike mentioned it. The only other time was back in that spring portion of the schedule, the FCS playoffs, round 1. They met up, and Jacksonville State won that game. But I think this is a good game. You're coming off of a big win, and a lot of times coming off a big win like that, you may have some issues riding a high a little bit. I think this is a good game, though, for Jacksonville State to kind of get back down to earth, play the game they know, and get ready for conference play.
Yeah, it's a big refocusing game, I think, for this team. And Mike talked about the defense, and I think the defense will be challenged the most going into this contest against Jacksonville State. They returned their starting running back from a year ago. Their quarterback seems to be really solid. He's a new starting quarterback for Davidson, but this defense will be challenged because it's a different kind of offense. Now, as Mike alluded to, they've played it before because Kennesaw State runs something similar with the triple option, but it's basically a triple option out of the spread. So you don't see that a lot in college football. The defense will have to play disciplined, and I expect a really quick moving game because triple option for Davidson. You tie that into what Jacksonville State likes to do: run the ball really quickly, run a lot of plays in the game. I expect it to go kind of quickly, but Davidson's a really solid team. They went 8-3 last year, one of the nation's leaders in rushing the football. They will take chances. They gamble a little bit, and I expect to see a really solid outing out of Davidson. And teams make their best improvements from game 1 to game 2. So we'll see just the degree of those improvements for the Gamecocks, who are looking to get a little bit sharper.
Yeah, certainly. And, I'm looking forward to seeing this game and seeing the Gamecocks. You'll be on the call with Mickey Shaddricks on ESPN Plus coming up Saturday for those who want to watch the game. Gerhard will be on the call there on ESPN Plus. Of course, Mike Paris, Ray Hammett will have it on the radio version. So excited about that coming up. Well, we have got we like to give things away, and I think this is one of the best things that we've had so far in the show's history to give away.
Oh, yeah.
We are giving away free boneless wings for a year to Buffalo Wild Wings in Albertville. The Albertville location only. It opened up Tuesday, and from what I'm seeing, it is great up there in Albertville. So we're going to give you a chance to win free boneless wings for a year to the Buffalo Wild Wings in Albertville, but you have to answer a question, and you would have to have been listening to WKXX Live this week on our trivia question. So caller number 3 right now, 256-413-1029. Again, that is 256-413-1029. We will take caller number 3 for our trivia question to see if you can win free boneless wings for a year. So again, it is 256-413-1029 if you'd like a chance to win free boneless wings for a year from Buffalo Wild Wings in Albertville. And we don't want to just hand you these, so we've got a question lined up here that we will be asking caller number 3. I think it's a pretty good question. So again, caller number 3, 256-413-1029 if you would like to win free boneless wings for a year. And it's a deal.
Oh yeah, it's a great deal, and I think that in my opinion, whenever you have these type of promotions, it's obviously great for the new location.
You are caller number 1. Call back. We're trying to get caller number 3. Let's see here. We got caller 1 out of the way. We're trying to get to 3.
Speed dial is a big thing here.
Yes.
On your cell phone, if you get back at it really quickly.
You are caller number 2. Try again. Next caller is going to be in. You are caller number 3. Who we got here?
Jeff from Rainbow City.
Jeff from Rainbow City. All right. Are you ready, Jeff, for the trivia question?
I hope so.
All right. So yesterday we were talking about LSU and we played some audio from Brian Kelly. What was the reason Brian Kelly said that he will not name a starting quarterback before the Florida State game?
I did not hear that segment of the show, so I would guess to say so that Florida State couldn't prepare for anybody.
It's close. It's close. It's close. I'll let you be the arbiter on this one, Chase.
It is very close, and I'm going to go with it.
Okay.
We gave it to someone who was close yesterday. It is. I mean,
Tactical advantage was what.
tactical advantage is what Brian Kelly said, but I mean, it's pretty much what you just said too. Jeff, you just won free boneless wings for a year. If you'll hold on 1 second, I'll get some more information from you. So hold on 1 second.
So congratulations
Thank you
to
very
Jeff
much.
from Rainbow City, and Chase will get that information from him. And tactical advantage was the answer to that. And keep listening because we will give away boneless wings once again.
Yeah.
It's a twofer today. So
Twofer.
so yeah, another chance to be like Jeff and like Braden yesterday, who have had their at least there are some meals for a while taken care of.
Yeah. So we'll talk to Lynn Scarborough with Lindy Sports coming up next. Hour number 2 on the way. Stick around. We got more WKXX Live here in a moment.
Inflation. It's causing all the prices to go up. You might be wondering if there is anywhere that your bank account can get some relief. Yes, there is. Martin's Family Clothing has your back during their Inflation Buster Labor Day sale. Friday through Monday, buy one pair of shoes, get 150% off of equal or lesser value. Some exclusions apply. Boys Select jeans and pants are just $22.99. Boys short sleeve AFCO tees are $24.99. Long sleeve $29.99. Get men's Carhartt graphic and
Can you hear
K87
me,
short
Jeff?
sleeve tees 2 for $30 or big and tall sizes 2 for $32. Discontinued colors and styles. Run towards the fall season with Junior Select Reflex joggers for $12.99. Ladies special purchases and tops and bottoms are 2 for $10. Don't miss the Labor Day tent and sidewalk sales for even more sales.
believe that's because of the culture he's curated down there.
For WKXX Live, these guys have you covered from preps to pros and everything in between. Now, let's go inside the Fox Sports 102.9 studio with Chase and Gerhard for WKXX Live.
Hour number 2 here on this Thursday afternoon. We welcome you in. Chase Robinson, Gerhard Mathangani alongside as we roll through this afternoon. And we've been telling you about a new program that will start tomorrow afternoon at 5 o'clock, the Lindy's College Football Report. You'll hear that every Friday. And one of the guys you'll hear on there, we've talked to him before, and we're glad to welcome on Lynn Scarborough from Lindy Sports. Lynn, always great to talk with you. Thanks for making time for us today.
No, thank you, Chase and Gerhard. We're really looking forward to this. You and I have talked about this. Gadsden's kind of a dear place in my heart in Etowah County. My father's family's from there. He graduated from Gadsden High School. My uncle had Scarborough Drugs in downtown Gadsden a long time ago. And so I've had family grow up there. It's a special place to me, and have wanted to be able to have our show in your market for some time. And glad that you and I were able to get together on this, and looking forward to being with you all the entire year. Thank you for the station and to the sponsors that make your show possible.
Absolutely. So tell the folks a little bit about what they could expect to hear when they turn on the Lindy's College Football Report.
Sure. Yeah, what we do each week, the first part of the show, we look at what's happened previously. We look around the country. We have interviews and spots from radio broadcasts and so on. Talk some of the issues of the day and major ball games that happened. And we have access to to be able to talk to players and coaches and include some of their comments there. In the second half of the show, we really look primarily at the SEC, but we look at all over the country, but primarily the South. And we talk about the games particularly and make predictions on the games. Graham Dunn is the host of the show. He's on the entire show. Michael Butler is on with him in the first half. I'm on with him in the second half. And I have the disadvantage of sticking my neck out so that everybody can hear it. And I predict the ball games. And, what we do is out there forever. And so, you can't deny that you picked a certain ball game. So, my reputation's on the line. So every week I pick the games, pick an upset of the week, try to give some content. We're not going to be a show that's going to be doing a bunch of crazy stuff. We try to be pretty solid in the sport journalism area of it, give some insight and some details that people may not already know, and we enjoy this. This will be our 10th season, Chase. So we've been real blessed with this. God's blessed us in what we're doing, and we appreciate it very much. And not a lot of folks in our business, stay in what they're doing for 10 years, as you know. So we feel really good about this and real blessed to be doing what we're doing.
Thank you so much for joining us, Lynn. And we're honestly really excited about the show. Before the season starts, what are some of the things that you're looking for within the SEC in general? We can get to some specifics in a bit, but if you're a casual SEC fan out there, what are some of the storylines that you'll be following as the season opens up?
Well, I think, of course, Alabama and Georgia being the two guys that played for the national championship last year, you've never had a situation before, really, where you had that. LSU and Alabama played for it about 11 years ago, I think, something like that, maybe 10. So you have had that situation, but now you got those two, and they don't play each other this year. So both of those could be on a collision course at 12-0 to play at the end of the season. I think the transfer portal has had a huge bearing on the SEC. It's going to be very interesting to see. You've got a situation where a majority of the schools will probably be starting players that have played at other schools, and some of them within the conference. Mac Johnson from LSU went to Texas A&M, and Finley and Calzada from A&M and LSU went to Auburn, and you've got a former Southern Cal quarterback left Georgia, while a former Southern Cal quarterback Jackson Dart comes to Mississippi. You've got it was difficult. We produce our magazines the last of April, 1st of May. And you're trying to make predictions on teams, and you're doing it really not knowing. Used to you could feel pretty confident on the 1st of May, on who was going to be playing and who the starter was going to be. Not so anymore. So it's going to be real interesting to see what kind of impact that has. And I think you got a couple of really, you got several games that should be pretty comfortable wins for a majority of the SEC teams, but you got 2-3 games that have got some very interesting aspects to them.
We're talking with Lynn Scarborough of Lindy Sports. I want to get into some specific teams. One of those playing tonight, Tennessee begins their season tonight against Ball State. A lot of folks are high. I think Tennessee's going to, put a good product on the field this year. What's your thoughts on Tennessee, Hendon Hooker at quarterback heading into the season?
Yeah, Tennessee's got to prove itself. We've had Tennessee ranked, several times over the last decade, and they kind of fall on their face. They lost to Georgia State in the home opener, I believe, a number of years ago. Here's your stat. In this millennium, this will be the 22nd season. In this millennium, of the 14 SEC teams, only 5 of them have won SEC championships. Alabama's won, I think, 7. LSU, I believe, has won 5. Auburn, Georgia, and Florida have won 3 each. Well, there's 9 other teams that haven't won one. Tennessee has not won an SEC championship in 25 years.
Wow.
And, when I was growing up, when you started talking about LSU and Alabama and Auburn and Georgia and so on as your traditional powers, you put Tennessee in that same conversation. And they haven't been in that conversation in a long time. They've played in a couple of SEC championships since then, but Auburn beat them and LSU beat them. And so it's been a while. I like Tennessee. I think Hooker's one of the better quarterbacks in the SEC. They've got the potential to have a really, really great offense. But last year, I'm talking from memory here, but their total defense, I think, was 99th in the country. And their passing defense, I think, was 122nd. And you don't have but 131 teams. So, Tennessee gave up 38 or more points in 6 ball games last year. Half the ball games, they gave up 5 touchdowns or more. They got to get tighter on defense. They're going to beat Ball State pretty comfortably. I think the next week, though, guys, is going to be the teller. They go to Pittsburgh, and that's more than just one Johnny Majors team playing another Johnny Majors team. That's Pittsburgh. A lot of people don't realize they won the Atlantic Coast Conference Championship last year. They've got another one of those transfer quarterbacks. I think he's a Southern Cal transfer quarterback. And Tennessee's probably going to go up there as the underdog. If Tennessee can go up there and beat Pittsburgh or play them real close, they may not going to be a disappointment this year. But I don't know that we'll learn a lot about Tennessee until they go to Pittsburgh next week.
For sure. Lynn, a couple of new coaches in the league, and obviously the coaching landscape changed a lot around the country with the USC getting a new coach and Miami. But some of the ones here in the SEC are really interesting as LSU begins their tenure with Brian Kelly and the Billy Napier era begins at Florida, and both have a really good game to start off their careers there at both Baton Rouge and and Gainesville. What are some of the things that you're looking for with these new coaches? Who do you think will have the most success in year one?
Well, here's the deal about Florida and Napier. This is their first 2 games, guys, are really significant. They play Utah. So this is, we said before, Johnny Majors team plays a Johnny Majors team. Well, here we've got a former Urban Meyer team playing a former Urban Meyer team. We've got Utah ranked number 7 in the country and to win the Pac-12. We don't have Florida in the top 25. Utah's probably a better team than Florida. That doesn't mean they'll win the ball game. It's important for Florida not to get mashed in this game. They play Kentucky the next week, and I think Kentucky's probably the dark horse team in the Eastern Division. Well, if Florida knocks off Kentucky and Utah in their first 2 games, people may say, oh, well, they should do that. It's Kentucky and Utah. They're not traditional powers like Florida, and Florida's playing at home. They may not realize how good Kentucky and Utah have the potential to be this year. That could be 2 really big wins. But if Florida were to lose to Kentucky and Utah, then they've got a tough schedule. They play at A&M. They play at Tennessee. They play the traditional game against Georgia on a neutral field. They play at Florida State. They got LSU coming down. They could start 2-0 and be a real contender. They could start 0-2 and be stretching to try to win half their games. So that is a very interesting game to look at. Same with LSU and Florida State. I'm not sold on either team, quite frankly. I think that it was a great hire, certainly from a PR standpoint, for LSU to bring in Kelly from Notre Dame. But I'm not convinced that this is going to be a great year for Florida State or LSU. I lean toward LSU in that game. even though they were a 3-point underdog last time I saw, because they're going to sort of have a home field advantage. Well, they have a home fan advantage being in New Orleans, but I don't know that that's going to make the difference. I lean toward LSU in that ball game, but they're both good ball games. Hey, one that folks are overlooking is Cincinnati playing at Arkansas.
Yeah, I certainly think so. I think that could be a really good game. I like Sam Pittman, what he's been doing. Do you see Arkansas having quite the season they did last year?
I really do. I like them. They don't play Georgia. It's my memory they don't play Kentucky. In fact, I know they don't, because Kentucky only plays the 2 Mississippi teams, or the 2 teams they play from the West. So Arkansas does not play the teams that we've got picked to be the 2 best teams there. Sam Pittman has those guys believing they can win, and he wants to be at Arkansas. That's a big difference from when they had, some of the other guys that they had, Petrino and Houston Nutt. Those guys kind of used it as a stepping stone. Well, Sam Pittman wants to be there, and he's got them believing that they can win. They've got a quarterback that's very good. And they're a solid program. I like them to beat Cincinnati, and this is no cut on Cincinnati, but I think they're right now playing off of what they did the last 2 years. That quarterback they had that was so good, I think he's gone. And this is not the same Cincinnati team that won 10 games and then made it to the college football playoff. I think maybe they're living a little bit on their past history for the ranking they got right now, and I'll be very, very surprised if Arkansas does not win that ball game.
100%. Lynn, one of the things that that I thought going into the year are some of the things that ties to the overall ranking. Texas A&M to me seems like they're overranked compared to what they always end up usually doing, which is losing some games that they shouldn't lose. What do you make of the Aggies this year? Obviously, a lot of talk in the offseason with Jimbo Fisher. What do you make of what Texas A&M brings to the table here?
Well, we have them ranked like 5 or 6 in the country, and I'm going to tell you, I think we have them too high. I'm not sold on A&M. They beat Alabama last year, and that's great and all that. But then they went in and lost 3 or 4 ball games. And if you're good enough to beat Alabama, you ought to be good enough that you're not losing 3 or 4 other games. I know they had the great recruiting class. We use 24/7 as our recruiting partner, and A&M had the highest ranked recruiting class in history of any team. Not Alabama, not Ohio State, it's Texas A&M. They had 7 5-star guys. Nobody's ever had 7 5-star guys. But this time last year, those guys were freshmen and playing in high school. And A&M, they're going to have a good year, there's no question. But I'm not sold on A&M. If I were looking right now, I certainly would take them to lose to Alabama. I think they'll beat Miami. I think the game in Arlington with Arkansas is a toss-up. If they come to Auburn and Auburn has not just totally collapsed, I honestly think Auburn may beat A&M. So I'm not sold on them. We'll see. I mean, everybody's on their bandwagon, and I think they're going to be good guys. But they're going to win the ball game Saturday. But I'm not sold on them being what everybody thinks they're going to be. I kind of agree with you, Chase, as far as thinking a little bit overrated.
We're talking with Lynn Scarborough with Lindy Sports. You brought up Auburn. That's who I wanted to ask you about next. What do you make of this Auburn team? TJ Finley gets the starting job for this game. What's your makeup of this Auburn team?
Well, if they have a problem with Mercer, it's going to be a really long year. I don't expect that. I really think Auburn could end up playing 3 quarterbacks Saturday: a former quarterback from LSU, a former quarterback from A&M, and a former quarterback from Oregon. Kind of ironic, isn't it, that Auburn sent a quarterback to Oregon, or Oregon sent a quarterback to Auburn. By the way, Georgia and Oregon is certainly one that's big. This is a good Auburn team, guys. I cover Auburn for Lindy's. And I've written a couple of features in our current magazine about the Auburn program. And to be totally upfront and open, I'm an Auburn journalism graduate. I went to Alabama law school, but I'm an Auburn journalism graduate. I know the program real well, and this is a loaded ball team. They're very good. Tank Bigsby's the best running back in the conference. You can make a case that Derek Hall is the best defensive lineman in the conference. Owen Pappy is a very, very good linebacker. 4 out of their 5 offensive linemen return. They have the best place kicking and punting combination in the conference with Anders Carlson and Chapman. So they got a lot going for them. But they've got 2 new coordinators. They finally got the quarterback thing settled. and they've got the only guy that's got as bad a schedule as they do is Mississippi State, which may be worse. Auburn's the only team that plays on the home field of the two teams that played for the national championship, who happen to be their two traditional rivals. They all the teams we're talking about being ranked, Arkansas, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, these teams that we've got ranked, that Lindy's has ranked in the top 25, Auburn plays all of those guys. And, by the way, here comes Penn State with Sean Clifford, the fourth-year starting quarterback coming in. Penn State's one of the top 10 traditional programs in the country. That's a tough schedule for a team with two new coordinators and a new starting quarterback. They're a good team. Now, is it gonna translate? Ask me after their game with LSU. I think Auburn could be 5-0. Right now, I kind of lean toward them beating Penn State and beating LSU. On the other hand, they also could lose to Missouri. They could be 2-3, and all the wheels be off, and no bet safe. Or they could be 5-0 going into Georgia. I mean, Georgia's going to win the game, or you'd think they would. But if Auburn's 5-0 and has already beaten LSU and Penn State, Auburn could be a contender. So I think they're one of the teams that's all across the board. I think Vanderbilt, don't be too deceived by their 63-10 over Hawaii. Hawaii lost 21 players to the transfer portal. No team in the country lost as many players as Hawaii did to the transfer portal. I think that started showing in the second half last week when you got the depth and you got new guys that aren't cohesive and hadn't played together. Plus, you got the snowball rolling downhill. Vanderbilt runs 2 fumbles in for touchdowns to get another one after another turnover. And sometimes when the ball is going down the hill, you just can't stop it. I think Vanderbilt's better than we thought they'd be, but I wouldn't put a whole lot in it yet until they play Wake Forest in the third game of the season. But Alabama and Georgia are pretty clearly the two best teams in those divisions. I really think you take the other 11 teams and put them in a basket and shake them around and dump their helmets out on the table. And I think any two of them could be second in the other division. Whoever ends up second is not going to be in the East. Whoever ends up second is not going to be that much better than whoever ends up sixth. And in the West, whoever ends up second is not going to be that much better than whoever ends up seventh. I don't think anybody will go undefeated out of that bunch. I also don't think any of them will lose all their games, because on a given day, you got a lot of good players in the SEC this year, a lot of good returning players, a lot of transfer portal guys that it's hard to wrap your hands around. So I look for it to be an interesting and pretty equal season. But if Georgia does not lose to Oregon, and who knows, maybe the fourth time will be the charm for Bo Nix. I don't think Bo Nix will come in scared. I mean, he's played in that facility before. He's played Georgia 3 times. Georgia lost a lot of players on defense, and I don't know. They're ranked Oregon's number 11, number 2 team in the Pac-12. They could go to the Rose Bowl, and I don't know that if I'm Georgia, I would want my first game with a lot of defensive newcomers to be played against a senior quarterback who's already gone up against me 3 times. I don't know that that's an ideal thing. I think Georgia will win, but I don't think it's a slam dunk. And I'll guarantee you, Bo Nix is not bringing that offense in here thinking they're going to lose. So that's a significant game. But I do think if Georgia beats Oregon, and I think they'll go undefeated in the regular season. I think Alabama will go undefeated in the regular season, and I think you'll have 2 undefeated teams playing for the SEC championship in Atlanta. Will that translate into once again having 2 SEC teams in the Final Four? I don't know. I kind of doubt it, but it could. You could end up with the same results, but I kind of doubt that. But that's sort of the way I look at the SEC from the outset.
Absolutely. We're talking with Lynn Scarborough, Lindy Sports. You made a point just a second ago that teased up my question perfectly, talking about transfer guys that can't necessarily get a full grasp of mentally, can't get our fingers around. One of those guys to me is Spencer Rattler, the quarterback at South Carolina. What are some of the things that you expect of him, given that now he's transitioning from the Oklahoma offense to Shane Beamer's offense?
Yeah, well, let's talk about how good the South Carolina offensive line is, and I don't know the answer to that. So I think that's a lot of it. It's not so much just what the quarterback does. If he's running for his life all the time and he doesn't have protection, then that's a different matter. And I don't know what South Carolina brings to the table on that. But that right there, though, guys, is an excellent example to look at. This time last year, we had Spencer Rattler as the number 2 guy for the Heisman Trophy playing for Oklahoma. This year, when we did the magazine, he was a Gamecock. He left because Caleb Williams came in to be the quarterback there. Well, when the games are played this weekend, Caleb Williams is going to be the starting quarterback for Southern Cal. Well, because he's the starting quarterback at Southern Cal, Jackson Dart left, and he's going to be the starting quarterback at Ole Miss. Because Jackson Dart got there, J.T. Daniels left and came to Georgia. But now since Stetson Bennett won the national championship, Stetson Bennett will start as the starting quarterback for West Virginia. You got to have a computer to keep up with this.
Yeah.
And anybody in the listening audience right now, let's do a little quiz and see if y'all can connect the dots on all the guys I just named. And that's not nearly scratching all the ones that are happening. And by the way, the starting quarterback that was going to be with Malzahn in Central Florida, I believe, if I'm right, he's now going to be the starting quarterback at Oklahoma. So it's just, it's amazing the way it's gone. I look for Spencer Rattler to do well, and I think South Carolina will do as well as Spencer Rattler can take them, but I think Spencer Rattler will probably take them as far as his offensive line will allow him to. And I'm not expert enough on South Carolina's offensive line, guys, to have a firm opinion on that.
Lynn Scarborough, Lindy Sports. Before we let you go, I want to talk about another Gamecocks. Gerhard and I, both Jacksonville State guys. We carry Jacksonville State football here on Fox Sports 102.9. I know you covered Jacksonville State football for Lindy Sports. What'd you make of the big win over Stephen F. Austin last Saturday in the Rich Rod debut there at JSU?
Oh yeah, that's great. And I was very glad, but I was kind of surprised the way that Jacksonville State pulled away from them there at the end and made it more or less a comfortable win. And you're right. I know y'all are a Jacksonville network affiliate, and I have had the privilege to cover Jacksonville State for more than a decade. It started with Jack. Of course, I knew Jack Crow from covering him at Auburn in the 1980s. But I started out being Jacksonville State as one of my teams to cover when Jack was the head coach, and then covered them when Bill Clark was there. Continued to be able to cover UAB with Bill Clark there, and he's become a good friend. And then when John Gross came in, who he and Coach Clark and Jack, are all friends. So it's been a really good continuous line of Jacksonville State being one of the guys in the country that's viewed as a power at what was the FCS. And now with Rich Rod, and I know I told you this, Chase, when we were in Atlanta together. I got the privilege to do a sidebar, one-on-one sidebar feature with Coach Rich Rod, and that was a real treat for me. Because coaches and players are not always what they appear to be. And I think the general fan base of every team, coaches have an image. Wimp Sanderson, one that comes to mind. Everybody thought Wimp, is this guy that's got a scowl on his face. And he's like, Wimp's a great guy. Wimp has been a friend of mine for a long time, and I've covered basketball for a long time. A coach is not always how he's perceived. And I think in some ways, Coach Rodriguez is not always perceived great because of Michigan and coaching out in Arizona and all that. But he's a great guy, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And he's just a down-to-earth guy. I think, and I do think the other guys that have been at Jacksonville State have been a good fit too. But I think that he may be a better fit for Jacksonville State than maybe people would have initially thought. I hope anybody that has got our magazine for the year. It is still on newsstands in some places. Could go in and read my feature, the sidebar feature with him. He's from a little bitty town in West Virginia, and it's sort of in a triangle where the town where Nick Saban was raised and the town where the Senator Joe Manchin was raised is in sort of a triangle with where Rich Rod was raised. And he's a West Virginia country guy, and his personality really seemed to fit in well with Jacksonville. And I thoroughly enjoyed getting to have a one-on-one with him. And I hope they play for the championship of the league. And of course, I don't know if they're eligible this year with the conference moves. But I think that it's a lot of credit goes to Coach Crow and Coach Clark and Coach Gross. Anybody that has not been to a game at Jacksonville State, hadn't seen their press box, hadn't been to their VIP area, I have covered a number of games at, quote, bigger schools that don't have a stadium and don't have amenities as well as Snowfield does there at Jacksonville. So I encourage people that have an opportunity, even if you're an Alabama and Auburn guy or UAB, if you're not going to that team's game and you're within from Gadsden to Jacksonville, it's not far, go down and see Jacksonville play. And to anybody in the listening audience, we have a lot of other good programs in the state of Alabama other than just Alabama and Auburn. Go see UAB, go see Jacksonville State, see North Alabama, go to Troy. I mean, we've got some really good teams in this state, and they work just as hard at Jacksonville State for what they do as they do on the Plains or they do in Tuscaloosa. So we're blessed to have the kind of programs that we do in our state, and we don't need to take that for granted.
You're absolutely right. Well said. Lynn Scarborough, Lindy Sports. Lynn, I got to ask you, when's the college basketball magazine set to hit the stands? Is there a date out for that yet?
Your timing could not be better. They were the office inventory copies were delivered to our office about 2.5 hours ago.
Nice.
Wow.
I have one in my car. I'm actually talking to you. I'm in a parking lot in Birmingham, talking to you from a parking lot. And I'm looking at the magazine. I haven't even seen it yet. I literally haven't opened it up. And so our college and our pro basketball magazines were delivered to our office today. Now, the procedure is, guys, that means if those got delivered to the office today, then they are on trucks on the way from the printer to the newsstand distributors. Once they get to the newsstand distributors, which would be probably one day next week, then they will put those on their trucks, and they'll go out and deliver them to the newsstands and the places where they're sold. And those people, if there's anybody listening to us that ordered one in advance and prepaid as a subscriber, we will probably be able to start sending those out maybe the day after Labor Day. And I would guess that in some places, by the latter part of the week after Labor Day, you'll start seeing the publications. And if you don't, call Lindy's office, and we can tell you where you can get them, or if not, if we've got them in inventory, you can buy one and we'll send it to you. Hey, let me say this too: if you're Alabama, Auburn, and I don't remember Jacksonville State and Samford and those guys, although I do think we picked Samford to have a good season, but we've got Alabama and Auburn and UAB. This is a little teaser. We got Alabama, Auburn, and UAB all to do well in their conference, and all three of them to go to the NCAA tournament. And we may have Samford picked to go to the NCAA tournament. I'm thinking we may. But anyhow, this promises to be a good basketball season for the college fans in the state. However, we're going to have a real fun, interesting football season before we get there. So we get to start enjoying that this weekend.
Absolutely. Lindy Sports does it best. I've got the college football magazine right here in front of me. Looking forward to getting the basketball magazine. Lynn Scarborough with Lindy Sports. Lynn, as always, enjoy talking with you. We'll do it again real soon, but thanks for taking time with us today.
Thank y'all again for carrying our show starting tomorrow. And then let's Chase, make sure to get on the air together a couple of times during the season.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Lynn. Lynn Scarborough with Lindy Sports joining us here on WKXX Live. We'll jump to a break here. We got a lot to get to in a short amount of time. We will give our SEC record predictions coming up next here on WKXX Live.
Being an Army Ranger is a very fast-paced lifestyle. I was clearing
on the schedule was Texas A&M, and I think Alabama handles them pretty well. So undefeated season for the Tide.
I have Alabama undefeated 12-0 as their finishing record. We'll see what happens in playoffs and all. But I looking at the schedule, I just don't see anyone who is going to beat Alabama. So let's go to Auburn now. What is your prediction for the finishing record for the Auburn Tigers?
I got Auburn at 7-5 going into this year. Some of the games that were kind of toss-up games for me, and it's one of the things that Lynn Scarborough just talked about in our previous segment. He hinted at the fact that Auburn could beat Texas A&M, and that's the game I went back and forth on. So I was between 6-6 and 7-5. I think Auburn trips up one team. And I think the team that they trip up is going to be Texas A&M this year. They'll win the games they're supposed to win, and then they'll lose. The games. I think the other 5 games that they lose being Penn State, LSU, Georgia, Ole Miss, and Alabama.
So I've got Auburn 5-7.
Oh wow! Okay, yeah.
I hope they prove me wrong. I think they'll lose to Penn State. I think they'll lose to LSU, Georgia, Ole Miss, Arkansas, A&M, Alabama. So I've got them 5-7.
That's interesting, and so I'm guessing their wins in conference. I mean, honestly, because you have obviously Mercer's going to be a win, and San Jose State will be a win. That would be really interesting. Do you think that's enough for Brian Harsin to keep his job?
No.
Okay, yeah, I'm the same way.
Yeah,
I'm the same way.
The way things are at Auburn right now, it may take a lot for a lot of wins for him to keep his job. Georgia, finishing record you predict for Georgia?
I also got Georgia undefeated, 12-0, 8-0 in the SEC. The only game that I thought twice about was, I think the Florida game could be interesting. I don't think Florida's there just yet. I think that the Kentucky game can be interesting. I don't think Kentucky's there just yet, but the one that I really struggle with the most for them is the Oregon game at the beginning of the season. But because it's at the beginning of the season, I think Georgia has enough firepower in order to put them away. So just like with Alabama, there's a couple of games that I think will be a little tighter where Alabama in their case, and now Georgia in this case, where the more talented team ends up pulling away, especially in the second half. So the only 2 undefeated teams are going to be the teams in the top 2 for me in each division, with Alabama and the second one being Georgia.
Yeah, I've got Georgia 12-0 as well, predicting them to go undefeated. Let's move to the Tennessee Vols. I'll go ahead and give my record prediction for Tennessee. I've got to go 9-3 this year.
Wow. I mean, I think that's kind of bold. I know you're really high on Tennessee going into the year. I like Tennessee this season, but I do see them losing 3 games. I obviously think they lose to Alabama. They lose to Georgia. I think they lose to LSU too, down in Baton Rouge. Those are my 3 guaranteed losses. And then the one that I struggled with the most was the Kentucky game. I have them beating Kentucky, so I'm right there with you. I think 9-3 is the record for them. I think that they could have some trouble with South Carolina going to South Carolina, but I do have them winning that one as well. And of course, take care of Vanderbilt, and I think they'll take care of Missouri, the other teams out of the SEC East. So I'm with you at 9-3, but the 3 games that I have them losing are Bama, of course, Georgia, of course, and then LSU.
Yeah, same with me, Alabama, Georgia, and LSU as well. I saw them on the road there at LSU. That's going to be tough for them to do that.
Right.
Arkansas, what is your prediction there for the Arkansas Razorbacks?
I have Arkansas still having a nice season. It might not look nice on paper, but 8-4 for the Razorbacks going into the year. I think that their losses will be Texas A&M, and that's the one that I went back and forth on. Of course, Alabama. And when I talked about Auburn a little earlier, saying that I think that they could that they can get some teams. I think that one of the teams that they will get will be Arkansas going into the year, and then Ole Miss. So I have the Arkansas Razorbacks at 8-4 on the season.
We were not looking at each other's records here, but I also have Arkansas at 8-4. Finishing the season. And I think in there is going to be a win over somebody that we didn't think they were going to beat. And I think there's going to be a loss that there's no business they should have lost to.
Yes,
I think that's kind of the year of Arkansas is going to have.
Right. I think similarly with the Razorbacks this year. I think that just they bring so much on their offensive line. Their defensive line, though, is really young. I think that they'll ride a little bit of the momentum from last year, but they lost a lot of guys. They have KJ Jefferson back, but they lost a lot of guys, playmakers on the outside. I think that'll be hard to replace.
All right, the Texas A&M Aggies. I'll give mine. I've got Texas A&M going 8-4. Just same old 8-4 Texas A&M.
I have Texas A&M. I was back and forth between 8-4 and 7-5. The games that I struggle with are going to be the Ole Miss game. Obviously, they'll lose to Alabama. I struggle with the Ole Miss game. I'm gonna go ahead and say it. It's 7-5. I had both games because I did a win-loss column for each team, and I have a bunch of scratches. And the one for Texas A&M that kept scratching out back and forth was the Ole Miss game, and I think I'll give it to Lane and the boys. I think that they'll beat Texas A&M this year. So 7-5 season for the Aggies.
I think that is quite possible. I think Texas A&M is one of the most overrated teams in the SEC in the country as far as all the hype in the offseason. Let's move on to Kentucky. I've got Kentucky going 9-3. I think that they keep on rolling. I mean, they finished last year 10-3. I think they're going to have another season. You look, they're going to get a win over Miami, Ohio. Then they've got Florida, which I think is going to be a really good game to start the season off with. They've got South Carolina at home, Mississippi State at home, Vandy at home, Georgia at home. They'll lose to Georgia. They'll lose to Tennessee and lose to Ole Miss. But I think those are the only 3 games they lose.
I have them a tick lower, and I have them at 8-4. And the one difference between my prediction and your prediction is I think one team gets them, and the team that I think gets them this year will be South Carolina. So I agree with all of your wins. They'll knock off Louisville at the end of the season. So their losses being Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, and South Carolina. I think that game is going to be an interesting one. As Lynn Scarborough said a minute ago, the differences between the number 2 seed and the number 6 seed in the SEC East, I think it will be within razor thin margins, and I think USC trips them up.
The Ole Miss Rebels. What is your record prediction there on Ole Miss?
I might be a little high on Ole Miss, maybe higher than a lot of people. I have Ole Miss at 10-2 going into this year. I think they knock off Arkansas. They knock off Auburn. They beat LSU. They obviously knock off Troy early on. They win all their non-conference games because their non-conference games are not that tough this year. Their toughest one is, I think, Georgia Tech. They also play Central Arkansas and Tulsa, which I think they'll get all the wins in the non-conference. And then their cross-division opponent being Vandy, I think they get a win there, and Mississippi State as well as A&M. Their 2 losses, of course, number 1 being to Alabama, who's going undefeated. And the second one will be Kentucky, who I just talked about a moment ago. I think that they'll have a really strong season. Kentucky will. The only game they get tripped up is USC, and the game that I think they'll surprise people and win is the Ole Miss game. So I have Lane Kiffin and the boys going 10-2.
I've got them 9-3.
Okay, yeah.
I love Lane Kiffin.
Yeah, same.
Always have, and probably always will. I've got them losing to Alabama, of course, in November. I've got them losing the week before that Alabama game at Texas A&M.
Right.
I think that's a game that A&M is going to sneak in and win. And then, like you, I think Kentucky will beat Ole Miss. So 9-3, and I see your case there for 10-2. I really do there for Ole Miss. Mississippi State, the Bulldogs. I got them 7-5. I think they're going to be better than what people are thinking.
Yeah, they have a really strong team this year. The only thing about them is they have such a tough schedule.
Yeah.
This schedule is really tough, and they have a really good quarterback coming back this year. And this is going to be hard to say because I as I was doing the win-loss, I was like, goodness, like I'm finding a hard time, collecting wins here because I think Ole Miss will have such a strong season. I think A&M, that's the game I was going back and forth on. I think A&M trips them up. So it ends up coming down to 4 wins, 4-8 going into the year. The toss-up games to me are going to be Texas A&M, the Auburn game this season, as well as the LSU game. I think those are the toss-up games. I could be wildly wrong, and if they win those 3 games, then they're now 7-5. If they lose all 3 games, they're 4-8. I think they go on the opposite side of that. I think they lose those games. It's a bold prediction, like I talked about with the 10-2. But the bold prediction to me is that Mississippi State has a really down year this year, and they finished with a losing season.
Yeah, very tough schedule though, as I look at it right in front of me here. So we'll see about Mississippi State. LSU under head coach Brian Kelly. What's your record prediction for the Tigers?
I got LSU this year at 7-5, which I think is a good starting point for a new team, new coach, trying to find each other, trying to feel each other out. Some notable wins I have for them this year. I think they knock off Florida State coming up on Sunday. I think they knock off Auburn. They win their games in the non-conference against New Mexico and Southern. I think they also obviously beat UAB as well. The losses that I have for them this year, I think they lose to Arkansas. I think they lose to Florida. I think they lose to, obviously, Ole Miss and Alabama, who we talked about earlier. The toss-up game to me was the Texas A&M game, who I talked about with Texas A&M earlier. It's going to be a tough game, but I had that going the way of the Aggies, so 7-5 for LSU.
I've got LSU 8-4.
Okay.
I think they're going to sneak a couple of wins in, and a couple of good wins. And, I think, again, they'll lose to Alabama, Ole Miss, Tennessee, maybe, at Texas A&M there to end the season. But yeah, I got them going 8-4. Florida Gators, Billy Napier. I got them 7-5. I think that's a good start for Billy Napier.
Yeah, I think that's a really good one. I only have them losing one more game. I have them going 8-4. Have their 4 losses being here in this opener to Utah. I think that's going to be a tough game. If they can pull that one out, then I think that they'll be on the right path for a really solid season. But I think that the Utes are just a little bit better. What plays in their favor, obviously, playing in that heat that Utah is not going to be accustomed to down in the swamp. But I have the Utes knocking them off. I also have them losing to the Vols, of course, Georgia, and we talked about earlier with Texas A&M. So I have them beating everybody else on their schedule. Their key wins this year will be a win over Kentucky. I think they'll get a nice win over LSU. I think they'll beat their arch rivals in Florida State at the end of the season. And, of course, they'll knock off Vanderbilt and Missouri.
Yeah, so that's Florida. South Carolina, where you got the Gamecocks at?
This was probably, to me, one of the tougher ones to do. I have South Carolina right now going 7-5 into the season. I think that their losses will be some of the ones I talked about earlier. I think they lose to Georgia. I think they lose to Texas A&M. That's another one of those toss-up games to me that can go either way. I think they lose to Florida and Arkansas. And then some of their wins, I think they pull off a nice win. As I talked about earlier with Kentucky. I think they beat Kentucky. I think they beat Missouri. They obviously win every game in their non-conference slate. And then at the end of the year, I think they lose to Clemson. So that'll be their 5 losses going into this season. I think 4 in conference, and then the non-conference game against their arch rivals from Clemson.
Yeah, I've got South Carolina 7-5. There are the Gamecocks. Missouri. Where you got Missouri at?
I also have Missouri at 5-7 going into the year. I think the games that they win are the ones that they're supposed to win. They'll win their non-conference matchups. They have La Tech in the non-conference, Kansas State. They're playing Abilene Christian as well as New Mexico State, and then I think they knock off Vanderbilt. I think they have a tough year in conference, losing to, of course, Arkansas, Auburn, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, USC, and Tennessee.
Yeah, so I've got Missouri 6-6. On the year, pretty even. Just they're going to win some and they're going to drop some. They probably shouldn't. I think they may be a touch better, but I don't know if it'll show in the record there. So I got them 6-6. And the Vanderbilt Commodores. I got Vandy 3-9.
Yeah, same for me. Obviously, they've already won one game. I think they win every game in their out of conference because they have a week out of conference schedule against Elon in Northern Illinois, and then I think they lose every game in the league. So 3-9 is exactly where I have them. I know they won't go unbeaten or they won't go winless on the year. They already got a nice win over Hawaii that Lynn talked about earlier, but it's going to be another struggle season for Coach Lee in the Commodores.
So those are our SEC record predictions, and we're going to keep tabs on this as we move through the college football season. We're going to be doing some other things too as we get ready for college football that we'll be keeping up with, including our picks. And so we'll give you a lot more picks tomorrow, but just a couple. Who you think's going to win this West Virginia Pitt game tonight?
The West Virginia Pitt game, to me, I believe it will go the way of West Virginia. I'll go JT Daniels going on the road, picking up a win there. Pitt's a 7.5-point favorite, but I like West Virginia here.
Yeah, if it was at West Virginia, I'd totally agree with you. It's at Pitt though. I think Pitt will win that one tonight. That should be a really good one.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of opening games on like Thursday night, you get a lot of more uneven matchups. I think that one is going to be really good, and you're going to see more great games on Saturday. I'm excited to see UAB tonight.
Yeah, same. I think UAB will have a lot of people out there. I heard that the request for tailgating has been off the charts. I think a lot of people are excited for this game. The fact they're playing on a Thursday, I can't stress enough how important that is. I think a lot of fans will be out there for both sides, for both Alabama A&M and for UAB. An interstate game in downtown Birmingham, great atmosphere. You talked about the weather earlier. I think the UAB gets it done on the field, but they do so in a nice environment.
Sure thing. So UAB coming up tonight, 7 o'clock on CBS Sports Network, taking on Alabama A&M. You've got Tennessee hosting Ball State tonight. You've got Central Michigan, Oklahoma State tonight. Just to name a few, then the backyard brawl of Pitt and West Virginia. We will break those down tomorrow for you and get you ready for what will be a very fun weekend. A lot we didn't get to today on the show. We will get at it tomorrow. And remember the college kickoff show coming up Saturday morning from 9 to 10. Even more college football talk. If you haven't heard enough this week, Gerhard and I will be back for 60 minutes of college football.
Yeah, that should be really fun because we're now diving into really all of the big games, diving into the big storylines going into the year. I think Lynn touched on a lot of storylines that he's watching that now I'll be piggybacking watching as well. So it should be really, really fun. One quick note, I got a text from Coach Michael Short, who's listening in, and he likes Florida to upset Utah in the Swamp. So I don't know about the rest of his predictions for the Gators, but that's one of the ones that I think that Billy Napier loses there in his opener. Didn't have a solid season overall, but Coach is calling for the upset of the team that is expected. A lot of people think that Utah can win the Pac-12 and make a playoff, but he likes the Gators there in the opener. Had to give him a quick shout out.
Oh, absolutely. There's been a lot of talk on Utah, but I would love to see Florida beat them.
Oh,
the
that would be great.
game. Especially the schedule Florida has is going to be really tough. That'd be great if they could start off with a win there over Utah. We have covered a lot today. Appreciate Mike Paris of the Gamecock Sports Network for joining us earlier on in the show. Appreciate Lynn Scarborough at Lindy Sports. I saw in Books A Million and the Ganston Mall the other day, there's still some Lindy's college football magazines on the shelf there, so you can go pick you up one before college football season gets good and going. And appreciate Lynn for talking some SEC football with us today. Appreciate you for listening in, and we will be back tomorrow with a 1-hour edition of the show. 60 minutes of WKXX Live from 2 to 3, and full day of football tomorrow, 2 to 3 here on WKXX Live, 3 to 5 at the press box, and then at 5 o'clock we'll have the Lindy's College Football Report. At 5:30, high school game night, and then we'll have Hoax Bluff and Glencoe, the 79th meeting between those two teams tomorrow night, and scoreboard to follow. And then Gerhard and I will wake you up at 9 o'clock Saturday morning for the college kickoff show. That's going to do it for us today here on this Thursday. We will talk to you again tomorrow. Have a great rest of your day.
Inflation,